How do you create a successful business and a fulfilling life? In 2020, after leaving the corporate world once and for all, I founded my digital agency that replaced a six-figure income within just the first few months. Since then, I've coached thousands of entrepreneurs across the globe to do the same. Now I'm on a mission to teach others how an exceptional life is not only possible, but very achievable through entrepreneurship. Join me in this podcast as I interview industry experts to learn the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts of what it takes to become a great business owner, and share some of the lessons I've learned along the way as well. Thank you for joining me, and let's dive in. All right, so this topic today, and I apologize, I'm sitting here in my hoodie and just like chilling. I haven't really gotten super ready today, but this is something that I feel is super important because it affects every single one of us. And there are some things that you can do to really navigate through learning how to stay more focused, learning how to stay more on task. Okay. So I wanted to talk about this because the first thing when it comes to understanding how to stay focused or how to prioritize things better, might be a better, a better way of even saying it, is to first understand or acknowledge with yourself, am I actually taking on too much work? Is there actually more work than I can handle on my to-do list here? Or am I creating more maybe stress around these things and making excuses because I am scared to move forward with some of these bigger projects? I don't remember where it was, but it was some type of leadership training that I was in where they were talking about how to watch for maybe a lack of confidence in skill set in our team members. And the trigger for that, or the flag for that, was watching and seeing what they procrastinated on, what tasks they procrastinated doing. And in most cases, the tasks that your team members procrastinate doing are the tasks that they feel the least amount confident in. And it was a really great training, but I actually took it, for myself, and I looked at it and I said, wow, that's so true. Everything that I procrastinate doing are the things that I either don't have a lot of skill in, and so I don't feel confident doing them, or they're things that just absolutely drain me, that bring me no joy at all, right? And so that was kind of an eye-opener, because I think a lot of times it's easy to say, I'm like a master justifier. I'm really good at justifying and saying I'll give an example. Starting and this isn't always a good thing. So, but starting like a new diet or something, right? I'm really good at justifying and saying chocolate comes from a bean and beans are vegetables. And so technically, this granola bar that has chocolate chunks in it is healthy, right? Or I mean, that's kind of a silly example, but you get what I'm saying with that, right? But in terms of, procrastination or things like that, we can be really good at justifying excuses to ourselves of why we don't need to start that project, or why we don't need to, start the thing that we're working on. And I mean, especially for business owners or entrepreneurs at the beginning of your journey, or at the beginning of the next level of your journey, this often comes into play where we put ourselves into analysis paralysis, which is a term that basically explains when we are overthinking something so much to the point that we are paralyzed from moving forward, right? An example of this in, business terms would be getting to the point of wanting to start a new business and being really excited about it, but being scared because it's your first time doing it, which I'm speaking from example or, from experience. I mean, being so scared because it's not something that you've done before and it's the unknown. And so you tell yourself, well, it's in my best interest to watch 3 more training videos before I take this step, or to change the colors on my website before I launch this, or to, just basically fill your time with meaningless tasks so that you feel busy, but it's actually not productive, right? It's actually not something that's moving that needle forward towards your ideal outcome goal, right? There's a quote that I really love by the author of Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits. I don't know why that was hard to say, but his name is James Clear, and Atomic Habits is probably one of the most popular books in personal development and business ownership. It's really, really good. But the quote that he shares that I absolutely love, he says, "The most invisible form of wasted time is doing a good job on an unimportant task." It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time, right? And I think that that's something that is really important to understand and really to be like honest with ourselves. Is this actually something that's important? Or am I just filling my time so that I feel important, right? And that's sometimes a hard pill to swallow, but a necessary one if you want to grow. The second thing that I would recommend with learning to strengthen that muscle of becoming more focused or being able to prioritize more is understanding what the value of your time is. And actually, I'm going to pause for a second and explain something to give some context here, because I feel like this is important. Maybe it's not, but I feel like it is. So I'm going to explain this. But I'm not saying, with any of this, I'm not saying that I am the expert in time management. I am not saying that I'm the expert in learning to focus or any of those things. In fact, the only reason that I have any knowledge around it at all is because it was once my greatest weakness. In fact, when I was in the corporate world, which I talk about a lot, right? Because it's my background experience, that was my go-to weakness, was time management. I always wanted to do more with my time and felt like I wasn't doing enough with my time. And when I'd have my one-to-ones with managers or, with bosses that I had, it was, how can I be better with my time management? Because I feel like I'm not being productive enough, or I feel like I'm not doing enough, right? And I will say too, because I know that whenever I hear people that I look up to talk about this, it gives me reassurance. But for me personally, for the past 10 years of my life, I have been, diagnosed with severe depression, anxiety, ADHD, and actually take medication for these things too, so that I can be more focused and that I can be more really, level, leveled out with the way that I am processing things and going through my day-to-day. But the reason that I share that, though, is because I don't want you listening, I don't want you to feel that, oh man, Hillary has it figured out, or or she sounds crazy talking about these things, maybe, whatever it is that your thoughts are on this. I want you to know that it's coming from a place of once having this be something that caused me so much pain because I knew it was such a strong weakness for me. And it's something that I have literally put blood, sweat, and tears into turning into a strength, which I would now consider one of my strengths. Absolutely. Anyways, a little bit of a tangent there, bringing it back to what I was talking about. I was talking about understanding how to really know the value of your time. And I think that knowing the value of your time is something that is actually, for me, it was the first step in really being able to wrap my head around a lot of these tactics or, methods for prioritizing or for time management. So here's a little exercise. I won't run through it, the whole entire thing, but I'll give you the steps for it so that you can do this. Either pause the episode and do it or afterwards. But what you want to do is write down on a piece of paper. And this is actually something that I do personally, probably 3 times a year, about once every couple months or so. I guess that would be once every 4 months. But what you'll want to do is first write down the amount of money that you are aiming to make gross, right? Gross, not net, gross for that year. Okay, so write down. So like, for example, if I'm doing this in January, but then I do it again in like April or May, I have a new idea, a clearer idea of what I want to be shooting for to make as an individual for that year, from a gross level. Okay, so write that down, write what you want to be aiming to make. Okay, and this is a big number, right? This is for the entire year. The next step, take that number and divide it by 52. Divide it by the 52 weeks of the year. After you have the number divided by 52, divide that by the number of days each week that you ideally would like to be working. So maybe that's 5, maybe that's only 3. Whatever it is, divide it by that number. And then the next step is to then take that number and divide it by the number of hours you would be working each of those days. So again, maybe that's 8 hours a day. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's only 2, right? That's whatever you want it to be, whatever you are designing your life to become. For me, I try to shoot that number for about 4 days a week. And around 5 hours a day is usually what I'm, in between. So once you have that number, that is your goal, right? That is your ideal value of your hour. And I will say this too. If you are a business owner, specifically if you are an agency owner who happens to come from Entre Institute and is listening to this, if your number for the value of your hour is less than $100 per hour, it's too low. Okay, aim higher. Have bigger goals. Aim higher. Okay. Be audacious with it. Love yourself enough to want something better for yourself. Okay. All right. So once you have that value of what your hour is, now it's going to be a little bit easier to go through these next couple of tactics or steps that I would recommend for staying focused, for prioritizing your time, and for being more productive. Okay. So now you've got the value of your hour. The next thing that you'll want to do as well, and kind of goes hand in hand with that exercise, is that you also want to create your, I call it the big rocks for your year, like the big rock goals. But it's really like your big audacious goal that you want to achieve for the year, right? What is it that you want to get at? What is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you're like, everything that you're doing every single day is aiming towards? And I call it the big rocks because if you're familiar with Stephen Covey's analogy of this, is he talks about a little glass jar, a glass mason jar. And if you have sand and bigger rocks and you pour the sand in and then try to fit the bigger rocks in around it, it doesn't fit. However, if you first put the big rocks into the jar and then pour the sand around it, it all fits, right? So it's the same idea here. What are your big rock goals that are so important to you that you want to focus on, that if you focus on those, the other pieces will fall into place? So have a clear idea of what that is as well. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about with that, and you're like, okay, that sounds cool, but I don't know how this applies, do yourself a favor and listen to or read the book, The 12-Week Year. In fact, let's see, I don't have it behind me, it looks like, but The 12-Week Year is a really quick read. It will help illustrate exactly what I'm talking about here, and it will help quite a bit with your time management. Okay, so once you have those things, the next step in becoming more focused is learning how to prioritize. So how to prioritize your tasks. So this is a big one too, because as an entrepreneur, especially when you're, first building your business, which when I say first building your business, I feel like I'm still first building my business, and it's been 3.5 years now, right? The next part of that is, you wear so many hats when you're starting out with a business that it's oftentimes really difficult to say, okay, what's actually worth my time and what's not? What should I start, preparing to delegate to someone, or what should I keep on my plate? And this is why I had you do the exercise with learning what the value of your hour is. Because here's a little decision flow chart to go through, right? If the task that you're doing is more valuable than the dollar amount of your time, okay, that makes sense. Keep it on your plate. The second thing to compare that against, though, is, does that task or doing that thing yourself, does it align with what your big rock goals are? If it does, if it is something that will ultimately help you get closer to that goal, great, keep it on your plate, right? Or have it be something that you are, working towards delegating eventually. But if it does not align with what your outcome goals are, and it does not, equate to being worth your time, get rid of it. Say no to it. Discard it completely. Okay. And I think that's something that is maybe a little bit easier said than done in a lot of cases, until you become, until you make that a habit of going through those thought processes when you're making decisions, especially if you are someone like me that is a people pleaser. Then it's going to take another level of, rewiring your mind to think about those pieces, right? Is it actually worth my time? Does it ultimately draw me closer to my outcome goals? And if it does, then okay, I'll keep this on my plate. But if it does not, hey, I can't do it. I don't have time for it, right? That's when you can say, I don't have time for it, right? Because it doesn't mean that you actually don't have the time in your day. It means that you don't have the time to invest in that thing, because it will pull you away from getting towards your goal. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to share here, and there are so many different tactics and tools and pieces that exist that can help you become more skillful at managing your time. In fact, I'll share a couple before I give this last piece here. I'll share a couple that I really love to use. So the first one is Eisenhower's box. If you are having a difficult time making decisions or understanding what to say yes to and what to say no to when it comes to adding new things to your plate, look up Eisenhower's box. It will help you make that decision. The second thing that I really love using is for those on YouTube, you can see this, but it's a visual timer. And that helps me a ton because I use it for the Pomodoro technique, which is the technique where when you have something that requires your attention and your focus, instead of just, sitting down and saying like, all right, I'll do this in between emails and while I'm responding to texts and scrolling on social media, the Pomodoro technique is where you sit down and you say, okay, for the next 30 minutes or hour or whatever time you specify, I am only going to do this one thing and nothing else. And then what you do is you set a timer for yourself, which I do this a lot. I use this like every single day, but you set a timer for yourself. And then you only focus on that one task until the timer goes off. And what's nice about that is a couple of different things. One, it allows you to let go of what the other potential distractions could be, because in your mind, okay, I can get to those when the timer goes off, right? The other thing too is that you no longer need to, like for me, one of the excuse time sucker things that I like say or whatever, or that I do is, there's a name for it. I can't remember what it is, but it's when you have an appointment like at a specific time during the day, and maybe that's an hour away or 2 hours away, but you don't want to get too deep into any other big projects because you have this other meeting or this other appointment that's coming up, and you don't want to lose track of time and cross into it. It might be an ADHD thing, but that's something that like I fall into almost every single day. And so a visual timer really helps me out a lot because I can set this and I know I don't have to be checking the clock every second because I already set the timer for the exact amount of time that I need to put into, that task. And I'm safe to put all my focus on that and not check the clock. All right. So those are a couple of, things that have really, really helped me. The last thing that I'm going to share here is more to do with overwhelm and with feeling stressed, with feeling that stress, with, just having the emotions of discomfort that come with being responsible for a lot of different things, responsible for a growing business, responsible for, providing for your family. And I just wanted to share a couple of things with that, because first off, I think that oftentimes we are too hard on ourselves, not only with, the amount of things that we pile onto our plates, but also too, that when we do start to feel stressed or we do start to feel overwhelmed, we immediately view it as a negative thing. And that is not the case. That is not the case. So my ask to you right now is to begin looking at that maybe from the lens of, wow, I feel so grateful that I can be in a position where I do have things that can be stressful or that can be maybe overwhelming a bit, right? Because I truly believe, for many, many reasons, but I truly believe that nothing will come onto our plate that we cannot absolutely handle. I shared this in a previous episode, but so I won't go too much into it, but I know that every single person listening to this has made it through every single one of your hardest days. You have made it through every single one of the most stressful situations, the overwhelm, you've made it through, right? And that alone is proof that there is nothing that is put on your plate that you cannot handle, right? So be grateful for the opportunities to prove that you're ready for that next level, because that's what it is. The second part of that, though, is that it's important to understand what your thresholds are. What I mean by that is, for me, I am actually, I might sound weird, but I actually thrive in high stress situations. I that sounds so weird, but I kind of enjoy them because because it puts that pressure on, and I just like boom, 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 boom. Like I can work through it really quickly, I guess. But I also know too that while I can handle overwhelm and stress, I cannot handle anxiety. I have a difficult time when I am feeling emotions around anxiety. And so I've had to do the work to understand what my thresholds are on both of those different emotions, or both of those different things. And so I think that's an important thing, because not all emotion is bad. I mean, we're human beings. We're meant to have emotion. But in order for you to perform or to, produce results or to grow a business, you need to be aware of yourself and aware of what your thresholds are. So make a note when you are of, a clear mind, and when you, not when you're in the midst of like a really stressful project that you're trying to crank out, but when you are, in a peaceful environment, make a list of the things that help you feel calmed down, or that help you release that stress or release anxiety. For me, sometimes the most productive thing that I can do when I'm feeling anxiety is to put down everything that I'm doing, stand up, and go on a walk by myself out in nature, outside, and just go on a walk for 10, 15 minutes. No, no cell phone, no distractions, just being outside and letting myself kind of recalibrate a little bit, So if that's something that, is maybe uncomfortable to sit in, maybe instead of allowing yourself to be, uncomfortable and unproductive, give yourself an outlet to reduce those certain things that might, that might be hindering your progress or hindering your productivity. There was one other thing I was going to share. Oh, it was this. I thought this was really important, because when I learned about this, it helped me out a lot. And I actually heard it from Alex Hormozi, who I love the Hormozis. I love listening to what they, what they share and what they teach. But he explained it this way. He said, overwhelm or feeling stressed, it's actually just a symptom of not knowing what the outcome is. That's why you're feeling those feelings. It's because you don't know what the outcome is, right? The unknown is scary. It is. It's a hard thing to step into. So one of the other exercises that you can do if you're feeling those feelings and it's hindering your ability to stay focused or to stay productive, then one of the exercises you can do is write out what the possible outcomes of that situation might be, and what your ideas or solutions of how to tackle those would be. And once your mind has a little bit, even if it's not like super in depth, but just a little bit of a plan of attack for what that game plan would be if, outcome A or outcome B happened, even just having that little bit of knowledge can oftentimes help reduce our stress or overwhelm around a situation and give us just enough confidence to step forward and be productive. So thank you for sticking with me on that. I know that was kind of going a lot of different points, but I hope it was as helpful for you as it has been for me, as I've learned all of these different things through the years. Hey, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Marketing Mastermind. If you took away any little golden nuggets or took down a mental note of any pieces that you loved from this episode, it would mean so much to me if you wouldn't mind sharing this with a friend, sharing it on your social media, or if you feel so inclined, rate and review this podcast. That is the best way to show your love and support and to get the podcast out there to more listeners. So I greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and I will see you on the next episode.